California Governor Gavin Newsom is facing mounting criticism over his handling of the recent wildfire crisis and unrest in Los Angeles, with public figures like Mel Gibson and Bill Maher questioning whether his response was timely and decisive enough. Critics argue that he appeared more concerned with image than action during a moment that required strong and steady leadership. The most pointed reaction came from Joe Rogan, who offered a blunt assessment when asked for his view, highlighting the growing frustration surrounding the governor's performance as the controversy continues to unfold. All of this happened as California was battling raging wildfires, and entire communities were at risk. Critics argue that during a moment when families, businesses, and neighborhoods were in danger, Governor Newsom did not respond with the urgency many expected. Instead of focusing solely on residents, he faced accusations of giving more attention to developers, investors, and influential donors. The backlash grew quickly, yet he continued moving forward with his approach. That is when Joe Rogan weighed in with sharp and direct criticism that resonated with many viewers. Now here is a clip of Newsom speaking about development plans while Los Angeles was still dealing with the fires. And if you are new here, be sure to subscribe for more updates. It is not hard to understand why many Californians felt left behind during such a devastating crisis. When homes were turning to ash and entire communities were under threat, seeing their governor appear relaxed in front of cameras did not sit well with many residents. Even if work was being done privately, the public image projected during an emergency carries weight. People were not looking for polished press appearances or carefully crafted statements. They wanted visible urgency, compassion, and steady leadership. Instead, critics say they saw staged moments and repeated talking points. True leadership is measured not only by policy decisions, but by presence during the hardest moments. And for many, Newsom's presence failed to provide reassurance. Rogan made it obvious that his frustration was real, and not just for entertainment. He sounded genuinely upset as he spoke about the situation. Then another issue added fuel to the fire. Reports that a significant portion of water had been redirected toward agricultural use, especially almond farming. Almond production plays a major role in California's economy, but critics questioned priorities when communities were struggling against flames. Many felt that in a life-threatening emergency, every available resource should have gone toward protecting residents rather than supporting industry profits. This concern amplified the anger expressed by Rogan and others as tensions grew. Newsom also introduced his own podcast during the crisis, a move that Rogan openly mocked, suggesting it showed a disconnect from the gravity of the moment. Critics argue that Gavin Newsom has built one of the weakest records among recent leaders of the state, saying he repeatedly chooses style over substance and image over measurable results. They claim he often appears more focused on headlines, branding, and public perception than on effective governance. Despite this, some Democrats continue to mention him as a potential presidential contender, which has only intensified the debate. Skeptics question whether someone who faced challenges managing California will be prepared to lead the entire country, warning that such a move could deepen division rather than deliver stability. In their view, Americans are looking for tangible outcomes and steady leadership, not carefully staged media performances. Critics argue that figures like Gavin Newsom and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have contributed to why voices such as Joe Rogan and Elon Musk have distanced themselves from today's political left. They say the shift did not happen overnight, but grew from frustration over what they view as excessive political theater and messaging without enough tangible results. In their perspective, a movement that once centered on fairness and reform has become driven by constant outrage and ideological battles. Rather than recalibrating, critics claim party leaders doubled down, which further alienated those who questioned the direction. As a result, some voters and public figures have stepped away, saying they want practical solutions and measurable progress instead of prolonged cultural conflicts. Not long ago, deportation operations ordered by Donald Trump were carried out in several major U.S. cities. And while most areas managed the situation without large-scale disruption, critics say the response in California under Gavin Newsom unfolded differently. What began as peaceful demonstrations escalated into clashes, property damage, and unrest, prompting accusations that state leadership hesitated as tensions grew. Opponents argue that instead of taking swift steps to restore order, Newsom appeared to align himself with the protests and avoid a decisive action. They claim the delay projected weakness and increased risk to residents. Eventually, federal authorities deployed the National Guard, and only afterward did Newsom publicly respond, drawing further criticism from those who felt his statements emphasized politics over direct accountability. The controversy has since fueled debate about his readiness for higher office and whether his leadership style meets the demands of national responsibility. Beyond debates about competence, critics have also raised concerns about transparency during the unrest in California. Several major outlets sharply criticized Donald Trump for deploying the National Guard without consulting Governor Gavin Newsom, framing the move as reckless and unilateral. Many people accepted that narrative at first. However, Trump later pointed to phone records indicating a 16-minute conversation with Newsom prior to the deployment, which sparked new questions. Critics asked whether there had been a misunderstanding, a miscommunication, or a misrepresentation of events, and why media verification did not happen sooner. Supporters of Newsom maintain that context matters, while opponents argue that clarity and accuracy are essential during crises. The episode has since become part of the broader debate over leadership credibility and whether California's challenges should factor into national political ambitions. More voices are urging Gavin Newsom to step down, and it is easy to see why Californians are frustrated facing crisis after crisis, from wildfires to housing shortages to rising crime. Many feel his leadership has consistently fallen short. Controversial decisions like diverting water to almond farms during fire season only fuel public anger. Critics argue that priorities have been misplaced, making it hard to understand how someone with this record could be considered for the presidency. Many residents say they trusted him to safeguard their communities and feel that trust was broken. Calls for his resignation are framed not as partisan attacks, but as demands for real accountability. Promoting him to higher office could be risky, as his tenure has often been marked by controversy, deflection, and style over substance. If this represents the party's top option, Americans may face disappointment. For those who value unfiltered analysis, remember to like and subscribe for more updates.